The night at Fairmont Crest glittered like counterfeit diamonds, camera flashes strobing, crystal glasses whispering together, and in the middle of a seemingly harmless charity fund unveiling, an anonymous USB stick landed on the table like the first drop of an oncoming storm. No one caught the hand that set it there. There were only hastily spliced videos, knife-edge timestamps, and a truth shifting beneath the satin sheen of luxury. Someone had turned Nicole's heart into a password to unlock the community's secret vault. Leslie hovered at the brink between redemption and collapse. Carlton evaporated like smoke, Joey gripped an unfired financial bullet, and Danny held a fragment of footage that could either save a life or become leverage. When Anita and Vernon ordered an emergency audit, the data room became both sanctuary and scaffold. Who holds the key, and who is waiting to burn to ash? If the victim behind the curtain is not as innocent as they seem, then who is the true director? And if dawn is only a disguise for the next storm, will Nicole be cold enough to freeze one more act of betrayal, or will she become the arrow that ricochets back, driving straight into the heart that is trying so hard to go numb? Inside Fairmont Crest, where everything is polished to gleam like a promise of safety, the metallic scent of betrayal has begun to seep from the cracks in the walls. Viewers long accustomed to sudden turns are shocked again as a secret arrangement between Leslie and Carlton is dragged up from the thin ice of their excuses. The agreement was engineered not to mend or redeem anyone, but to drain an anonymous funding source tied to prestigious projects while turning Nicole into an emotional lever, a convenient keyhole to the accounts, files, reserve funds, and approval chains she oversees. Leslie stepped into the game with the heartbeat of someone sinking into a nameless financial whirlpool, afraid and caustic at once. She convinced herself she was borrowing luck for a moment to make right a string of failed investments, soothing her conscience with the fantasy that everything would be paid back when the tide calmed. But an old cocktail of pride and resentment poured fuel on the blaze, because in her eyes Nicole had become the symbol of an ease and privilege she herself had never been allowed to touch. Carlton was different. He arrived like a seasoned hunter who knows every footpath in a world where everything is wrapped in the language of repentance. With the instinct of a man who can addict others to the feeling of being loved, he staged a conversion, a personal redemption plot, then slid a breach plan inside it. Night after night, once the mansion dimmed, Carlton left footprints and login logs, sifted through meeting schedules, saved unsent email drafts, and made after-hours visits to Nicole's office. It was all set to look like harmless project support, the ready hand of someone who wanted to help her notch one more success. Leslie crouched behind him, clearing the road with dummy consulting contracts and small trickle payments, small enough not to set off alarms, large enough to seep steadily through approval systems. Their calculation was cruel and simple: a soft heart that wants to believe in goodness will always unlock faster than any complex password. But the script they believed was airtight began to leak from very human fissures. Nicole, ironclad before the press but soft with vows of fidelity and a life poured into work, became the easiest target to bruise. The same night she tried to stitch together family ties and shoulder closed door pressures, she unwittingly opened gaps for Carlton to drive stakes. Meanwhile, Danny, with the intuition of someone who has lived perilously on the border between loyalty and survival, quietly paid an in-house tech to pull the rare CCTV clips that prove Carlton stayed in the building without permission. Danny was not spotless. She wanted to protect Nicole, yet she also wanted a deck of cards ready for the moment everything turned, because she has learned that here no one is truly safe without documentation to rescue themselves. In another dark corner, Joey smelled money. With a big game player's instinct, he built a financial snare, coaxing Carlton across e-wallets into a fresh offshore account in a tax haven, then recorded the entire flow to trade for leverage with Leslie. Vanessa, caught between lucrative ties to the casino world and a duty to shield a marquee client, wrestled with the math of reputation. If she turned her back on Nicole, she would lose the credible halo she had earned. If she publicly sided with Nicole, she risked being cut out of profitable circles. In the end, a cold assessment of reputational risk forced Vanessa to lay her entire appointment ledger, invoices, and receipts on the review table, an act that made her the next target for any coming reprisal. At the same time, Ted received anonymous emails whispering about an affair between Nicole and Carlton, and jealousy, blind and immediate, cast him as a controlling man, shoving Nicole farther from safety, isolating her, making her easier prey for the psychological choreography Carlton had prepared. Martin and Smitty, who seemed like mere onlookers, became essential links. They traced faceless consulting contracts, digital signatures, a hastily erected shell company, and as the stack of documents grew, they recognized they had stepped onto a battlefield where truth would cost them the relationships they valued most. No light fell on the mansion when Anita and Vernon, custodians of the family's honor, called for an emergency audit. the decision to freeze every disbursement arrived in a harsh silence, and with it Leslie was shoved out of the last circle of protection that had tolerated her. The night of the charity fund unveiling, staged to be a baptism of reputations, mutated into a public scaffold for illusions. As lenses swept the room, a leaked recording flashed across several phones, Leslie's cool voice ordering Carlton to complete the job by the deadline. No plea could repair the groundless plunge in Nicole's stomach as each word from those tiny speakers stripped bare the way she had been turned into a prop. But the pain of being deceived was not enough to break her as her puppeteers had planned. In a beat, the instinct to protect her work, herself, and those who had trusted her snapped to the surface like a blade. Nicole used every power she still held, froze accesses, moved files to legal, signed off on an internal investigation, and filed formal complaints. The auxiliary accounts Carlton had been casually hovering over the night before hardened into concrete walls. Panic, real panic, flickered in Carlton's eyes for the first time as the lockout banners stacked up. He left behind a plaintive message that everything began as a lie but had become real, as if love were a valid appeal for leniency. It rang hollow against the paperwork Martin and Smitty were shuttling into Anita and Vernon's audit team. The anonymous victim, the backer whose funds had been siphoned, refused to play quiet benefactor any longer. He froze capital flows, hired private investigators, and angled media attention exactly where it belonged, turning every spotlight onto the dirty deal Leslie had imagined forever concealed. Ted, facing the cost of his own blind suspicion, chose a frigid path. He pursued procedure to the letter, building a wall of paperwork to hide a hemorrhaging pride, and recognized too late that he had helped deliver Nicole into a predator's hands. Joey kept his bullet, a clean ledger of transfers to island banks and a digital map of tokenized money that could collapse Carlton with a single well-addressed send. In exchange, Joey wanted useful silence from Leslie or a quiet slice of a project she once fantasized about salvaging. Having supplied appointment trails and invoices, Vanessa understood that her clearest self-interest now lay in staying upright through the gale and in telling her own story as the broker who put the right facts on the table while others scrambled to bury them. The emergency audit run by Anita and Vernon churned under suffocating tension. Numbers were no longer numbers but needles pointing toward a place where an invisible wire might tether Leslie to hands no one dared to name aloud. From the moment the plot was exposed, Leslie lived inside an airless space between the reflex to survive and the need to punish. She no longer believed in redemption through paying lost sums back once the waters calmed, the wave had broken, and the sand under her feet was sliding. She fought herself between two doors, dragging others down so she could breathe, or acknowledging her role in gambling on mercy from a council that prized honor far above compassion. Carlton vanished, as if he had never existed, leaving behind only log entries and a thin red thread running to whoever opened that account in his name. After the brutal fall, Nicole no longer wished to prove anything with gentleness. Her cold anger hardened into a severe discipline, relabeling every memory of feeling as data and every embrace as risk to be costed. She endured public humiliation to hold one point fast: she would never again let her heart serve as a password. Yet just as she believed she had pinned every loose end, a nameless USB stick appeared on her desk inside an unmarked envelope. Inside were spliced videos, some crisp, some grainy, hinting that more than two hands had shaped the manipulation. A silhouette schemes a window's reflection, a timestamp mirrors the day Joey set his offshore snare, an internal email predates even Leslie's first impulse to cheat. Nicole paused on the final frame, not to grieve what was gone but to ask the questions that would push the nightmare beyond the borders of her private life. Was the anonymous victim truly innocent, or had he benefited from the system before and now raged only because his privilege was interrupted? Did Danny pull the CCTV to save Nicole or to barter it outside for her own safety? Was Joey chasing profit alone, or shielding losses from his past? Would Ted use this scandal to seize control by different means, legal, colder, no less authoritarian? And, most of all, was Leslie actually the one holding the baton, or just a pawn shoved onto the front line to screen a silent player behind the curtain? From here on, there is no margin for error. Anita and Vernon understand that family honor cannot be purchased with flattering profiles but with numbers spread out under new light. They must choose between an internal settlement to blunt the noise or throwing the doors open so outside authorities can walk in. Martin and Smitty, whose own hands pried the truth into daylight, now faced the risk of being isolated by the same community that once applauded their diligence. Vanessa, though she bet on the right side, must brace for the counterpunch from those who will brand her a traitor. Joey smirks in the dark with an unfired bullet, weighing what to trade it for: power, cash, or safety. And Nicole, wearing anger as armor, begins to reset the board with patient hands and a cooled heart, unwilling to let any soft moment become the breach for the next attack. The story does not end with the slam of one door, because another has just swung open, the data archive, where old records may tell the complete history of money gone astray long before Leslie and Carlton appeared. If that room is locked, who holds the key? If the USB is a message, what does the sender want, absolution or a deal? If truth is a jagged graph, whose plunge is the next peak's shadow? And if justice finally comes, will it arrive like a sunrise or like another storm that tears every last person out of the safety they mistook for home? That night did not close with the snap of a lock but with the held breath of all Fairmont Crest as the lights dimmed and a fine dusting of secrets hung in the air. At dawn, an expanded audit order went out in tandem with court summons, media vans lined up outside the gates, and in the data room the system recorded a strange access exactly 30 seconds after the security upgrade. Standing at the console, Nicole saw a chain of logs trimmed so cleanly it couldn't be the work of an amateur. In the window's reflection, a shirt cuff flashed an old family crest, an insignia almost no one still owns. On her desk lay an unmarked envelope, a fresh keycard, a chess knight with its neck worn down, and a schedule of transfers set to trigger at midnight to an account opened exactly where Joey once set his trap. Elsewhere, Leslie sat between two suitcases, one filled with documents enough to drown her, one packed with clues that could pull others under, measuring survival in silence and Counter-Strike, her phone lit with an attachment proving this game began before she ever stepped onto the board. Danny traced a hidden chain of auxiliary cameras buried in the wiring diagram and found a private signal tunnel punched into the system months ago. If she yanks that cord, the one who falls may not be the person everyone expects. Joey spun the safe dial and held back his final bullet, a ledger of money flowing to distant islands, only to watch the projected balance vanish as if someone had withdrawn half a beat early. Martin and Smitty signed the handoff to investigators, aware that from here on they control neither the narrative nor the cost. Anita and Vernon entered the room where numbers stopped being numbers and became a map of power and the cuts across honor. When the hour struck, a red diode in the data room winked like a conspirator, signaling a backup uploading to an untraceable cloud. The question hung like a blade. Who truly holds the key to the secret vault, who turned Nicole's heart into a password, and who stands behind the curtain with enough time, money, and memory to rewrite the past? When we return, will justice open like a sunrise, or will it be a new storm that scours what's left, and who will be the first thrown into the eye of it?